There are some TV characters that we get to know so well over years of watching them that it becomes impossible to imagine them being played by anyone else. And yet, while the casting might seem obvious to us, a ton of our TV sitcom faves weren't actually first in line for the role. Keep watching to find out just which of these iconic characters were almost played by someone else.
It's the year 2020. Are you still enjoying your nap?
Chandler Bing. Miss Chandler Bing. Friends is without a doubt one of the most prolific sitcoms ever. It ran for 10 years and in that time stayed one of the most popular shows on TV. And then a decade later, we became obsessed with it all over again when it was released on Netflix. But you have to wonder, would the series have struck the same kind of comedy gold if the gang had been played by different actors? Would the chemistry have been totally off? Well, in an alternate universe somewhere, they know the answer to that question, because in their version of Friends, Jon Favreau took on the role of Chandler. That's right, Favreau was actually offered the role, but he turned it down to work on other things. He came back later in the series to play Monica's UFC-loving billionaire boyfriend, but imagine if he had been Chandler all along. Matthew Perry was already attached to another series while the deal was going down, but lucky for him and us, his other show fell through and Favreau said no to the role, and the rest is history. Don't worry though, seeing as how Jon Favreau has gone on to jumpstart the entire Marvel movie tidal wave with Iron Man and successfully take the Star Wars franchise to new heights with The Mandalorian, he seems to be doing okay. We've got to stick to Friends for just one more minute, because one more casting change almost made a huge impact on the legacy of this game-changing TV show. Every single actor in the Friends group seems so perfectly suited to their character that the idea of them playing anyone else just seems too weird to believe. But if it weren't for Courtney Cox and her Monica-style persistence, we might have had something totally different.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
Because originally, Cox herself was supposed to play Rachel. Early on, Cox was one of the actresses who was brought in to audition for Rachel, and the casting directors loved her. They had already decided that they wanted her to play the role when Cox herself asked to read for Monica as well. They decided to give her another audition just for fun, and then tell her that she had been cast in the other role. But she just blew everyone away as Monica, so they gave her that part instead. This is all before they had even met Jennifer Aniston, who nailed Rachel from the moment she stepped in the room. When it was announced that they were remaking the smash hit British TV show The Office in the United States with Greg Daniels at the helm, all of Hollywood came out to audition, and of course the role of Jim was one of the most highly coveted. A lot of actors got pretty close, but none quite as close as Adam Scott. Scott is well known for his very dry humor that has worked so well in other workplace comedy gigs like Parks and Recreation and the criminally underseen Party Down, and so much so that he was almost cast in the role of Jim. It all came down to the final round of chemistry reads. The actor who was going to play Jim needed the right connection with the actress who was going to take on Pam, and when Jenna Fischer and John Krasinski got in the room together, it was undeniable who was going to get the roles in the end. Their chemistry was just too good. While we think Adam Scott could have been great in the role of Jim, there is just no beating the Jim Halpert we know and love today. Sometimes, even the actor who wins the role in the end is a little surprised that the casting directors chose them. Pleasantly surprised, of course. Such is the case for Neil Patrick Harris and the most notable role of his career, wait for it, Barney Stinson. Harris has said before that he was genuinely surprised when he was even brought into the room to audition, seeing as how the original breakdown called for someone who was very, very different from him. Originally, they were looking for a Jack Black or John Belushi type for the role, which is totally the opposite of the Barney we know and love. Even stranger, it wasn't Jack Black who was one of the top contenders for the role, it was Jim Parsons. That's right, Sheldon himself was almost cast as Barney Stinson. While we think Parsons is a great actor capable of so much more than his Big Bang Theory character, we cannot imagine him in the role of a suit-loving womanizer like Barney. Luckily, Harris wowed the casting directors in the audition room and eventually won the part. Another casting decision that would have made How I Met Your Mother a very, very different show took place when it came to the role of Robin. Robin is definitely one of the best characters on the show, and Cobie Smulders is totally responsible for bringing our favorite Canadian to life. But even though she seems so perfect for the role, there was a time when Robin was actually offered, and someone pretty unexpected at that. Originally, the team behind How I Met Your Mother offered Robin to none other than 90s queen Jennifer Love Hewitt. The actress, who came to fame in the 1990s as a teen heartthrob in movies like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Can't Hardly Wait, was given the chance to take on Robin Scherbatsky without even an audition. And yet, she decided to turn it down in favor of starring on Ghost Whisperer. The show ran from 2005 to 2010, but it wasn't nearly as popular as How I Met Your Mother would turn out to be. Luckily for then unknown Cobie Smulders, she was brought in for Robin and totally nailed the audition. Modern Family burst onto TV screens in 2009 and became an instant sensation. The comedy about a big mixed American family was immediately popular with audiences everywhere because of how amazing the chemistry between all of the family members were. Each unit seemed perfectly suited for each other and really felt as though they had known each other all their lives. But it might have been a little different if one of the most popular characters on the show had been played by someone else. And not someone unknown either, but an actor from another one of the most famous sitcoms of all time that we have already mentioned in this video today. The one and only Matt LeBlanc was actually offered the role of Phil Dunphy, the father of the Dunphy household and almost everyone's favorite member of Modern Family. Matt turned down the role because he just didn't feel like he was the right actor to take it on, even though he loved the script. Fortunately, Ty Burrell won the role and all of our hearts as the funny, well-meaning Phil. Seinfeld is, without a doubt, one of the most influential and iconic sitcoms ever. Maybe even the most iconic sitcom ever. It came along and launched the careers of so many incredible comedians, including Jerry Seinfeld, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Jason Alexander. But one of those people was almost not a part of the whole game-changing TV show of all time, and we'll give you a hint. It wasn't Jerry Seinfeld or Julia Louis-Dreyfus. That's right, Jason Alexander was almost not cast in his best-known role to date because another actor who was already very famous was offered the part. Danny DeVito was everyone's first choice to play the grumpy George, and when he turned it down, it was then offered to none other than Chris Rock. Imagine how different the show would have been if either of those actors played George. Alexander assumes that DeVito was at such a high point in his career that he wouldn't want to play a supporting role, but has never gotten an answer as to why Rock also turned it down. Speaking about Seinfeld, can we talk for a minute about the much-loved Julia Louis-Dreyfus? At this point, we just can't imagine a world without her. Her work on Veep is some of the best acting ever, and her ability to mix comedy with intense emotion is like no other. She is undoubtedly one of the biggest talents working today, and the idea that she almost didn't play Elaine Barnes, thereby solidifying her place in Hollywood, is downright tragic. But that's what happened, because another amazing actress was almost cast in the role, but was beat out by Julia after a ton of auditioning. Megan Mullally, best known for her breakout performance as Karen on Will and Grace, got so far into the auditioning process for Seinfeld that she actually thought she was gonna get it. She had multiple auditions with Seinfeld himself, which, if you know anything about casting, only happens when you are one of the top 2 or 3 choices, and she says that went really, really well. It's almost a good thing she didn't get it in the end, because we don't know where we would be without Karen Walker, and no one else could have played that part. While there was never anyone else in the running to take on the wealthy and terrifying Karen, the same can't be said for the roles of Will and Grace on the hit show, well, Will and Grace. The search for Will was particularly tough, as this was going to be the first time ever that a gay character was going to lead a primetime TV show. They needed to find exactly the right actor for the job, and it wasn't always Eric McCormack. Will was almost offered to John Barrowman, an actor you might remember for his hundreds of TV roles on Doctor Who, Arrow, Torchwood, and Desperate Housewives. Barrowman was one of the frontrunners for the show, but according to him, was turned down because he wasn't gay enough. Which is strange because Barrowman is actually gay and Eric McCormack is not. Whatever the reason, Barrowman has gone on to all kinds of amazing success, and we can't imagine any other Will than the Will we have grown up with. Macaulay Culkin was one of the most famous child actors in the world, and even though he doesn't act as much as he used to when he was little, is still a very well-known person and a great actor. Seeing as how he doesn't take on too many projects these days, we were super surprised to learn that he was offered a massive sitcom and turned it down 3 times. He said that the creators of the show pitched him the concept of a sitcom about 2 astrophysicists living with a hot girl, and he was just really not interested in the idea, so he turned it down. They approached him a second time and he said no again, and by the 3rd time even his manager was trying to get him to agree, and yet it just wasn't his thing, so he said no. Famously, the main actors on The Big Bang Theory were all making $1 million an episode by the end of the run, and while Culkin says he knows the show would have made him hundreds of millions of dollars, he would have been miserable making it. Wow, can you imagine if some of those original castings had actually gone through? Do you like any of the would-be choices, or are you happy that things worked out the way they did? What is your favorite sitcom of all time? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to keep up with all things ScreenRant.